Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I've been waiting a long time to watch this movie.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss Hereditary, which released in 2018, written and directed by Ari Aster. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, the story follows the Graham family, with mum Annie Graham, played by Toni Collette. Annie's mum has moved in with them but has sadly passed away recently. And now the family are starting to notice strange things going on in their house. After they sadly lose their daughter Charlie in a car accident, the family try their best to stay together while imposing dark forces around them try to tear them apart.
So this was Ari Aster's debut movie. He had made some short films before this one, but he wanted to make a film about trauma and pain, and he wanted to make a film that dealt with that family trauma seriously. So much so that he wasn't even making a horror movie with the original script, but as he was developing the script further, he realized, well, in order to make this, I guess, more viable for a wider audience, let's just break it more and more into a horror movie. And when Hereditary came out, it did very well at film festivals. It did pretty damn well commercially as well in cinemas. And Ari Aster has become one of those horror directors to look out for now.
Yeah.
When he drew inspiration for films like Don't Look Now and Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
And so he had those sort of classics in mind as to tell kind of an old school horror movie, but done in, well, with modern technology in a modern way.
Yeah.
And Hereditary was the film that when it came out, I watched and I was like, you know what? Thank you very much. I like my horror movies that are kind of entertaining and fun. Hereditary goes, no.
Yeah.
You're not going to have fun with this one. It is bleak and it is dark and it is oppressive, and there is a malevolent sense of evil that encompasses the entire film that just heightens its grip on the characters within it and you as you're watching it, that by the end I'm just like... I'm done. Thanks, Ari. I won't be coming back. Oh, Midsummer? That sounds fun.
That sounds fun.
That's why I've not seen Beau is Afraid yet. I'm like, I'm sorry, Ari.
Are you afraid?
I need like 5 years in between your movies. You're releasing them too fast. I can't do it.
I was the same. I saw Hereditary drop, the trailer dropped, and I was just like, ooh, Toni Collette. She looks terrified. If Toni Collette is terrified in the trailer, I don't think I want to watch this movie just yet, because she's such a great actress that I kind of buy what she's vying to me, through the screen. And so I said to myself, you know what? I'll give it a wiki, see what it's like. Oh, I like the story, but I'm just not there at the moment for this new fledgling director. That, the whole world was like, oh, it's absolutely amazing. And when the whole world does that, I'm like, you know what? Let's see what he does second time round, And so second time round, Midsummer came out. And I was kind of really blown away by Midsummer because I think he'd successfully shown what he could do with Hereditary. And so then with Midsummer, it was like, look, here's budget, do whatever you want, go a little bit crazy. We kind of want to see what you can do. And, kind of like the whole Jordan Peele aspect that came out, people were like, oh, I like his first, but I don't like his second. Or I like his second and I don't like his first. And it's back and forth. And I just kept waiting. Every time I saw Hereditary pop up on Netflix or, 4K DVD or whatever, I was just like, you know what? I'm good. I love the fact that you've got the little girl, Millie Shapiro, playing Charlie. Now, obviously, Millie is got a kind of facial thing going on from birth. And I think that was brilliantly used by Ari Aster for the movie to just have a new look for this actress.
It wasn't in the script in terms of who they were looking to cast. They were just looking for a 13-year-old for the role, and Millie was just one of those that auditioned for it. But she gave such a strong performance that they were like, we'll actually hire you. And the fact that you have, unfortunately, a face deformity or a medical condition that caused it, it actually also elevates and changes the character as well. And because the character is kind of strange.
Yeah.
With the fact that she's cutting off dead pigeons' heads and attaching them to toys. With the way that she looks, it's kind of, it just adds another layer to the don't really understand this character or what's going on.
Yeah.
It's weird.
She is weird, which obviously just goes hand in hand with the rest of the weirdness that is going on in the movie. I mean, the friggin' start where the camera comes down and is looking at all those models. Honestly, what kind of weird fucked up family has to have those kind of models in their house? Like,
that's the mother's living.
I get it, but Lego is one thing. I'll go with Lego models all around the house. If I get home and the wife is making actual reincarnations of rooms that we've had and situations where I'm like, is that me in bed and you looking over me? I'd be like, burn it. Burn this whole room down.
That is the I mean, it's the mother's way of dealing with trauma.
Yeah.
And she is not able to move past this trauma. And as the film goes on, we find out that, she does recreate those traumatic moments in her life as miniatures, and she makes a living off selling these to art shows, I suppose. And the film also, like, with the fact that we start with the panning of all of the dollhouses from the outside, like treehouse into all of these little houses, and then we see Gabriel Byrne walk into the dollhouse. It immediately presents all of the characters in this film, in this family, as dolls, as playthings that are being moved around on this stage for us. And I also love that there's a kind of Wes Anderson symmetry almost. And I mean, just to carry on the fact that it almost feels like a stage, there's quite a few shots, like at a funeral later on, where it's kind of staged, where there is a fourth wall and all the characters are presented like in a dollhouse for us to look at. And so I just think it's great. Like, the framing device from the very beginning of the film just sets everything up wonderfully.
Totally. The framing, all of the visuals, there's so much going on that you need to watch this film at least 3 times.
It is so damn layered.
To look at the background and capture things that you go, oh my God, that's there. That's there. You know, I personally have had enough experience with cult-like movies that I'm always looking past everything to try to catch what's going on. I mean, there's a couple of sequences in this movie I had to rewind and rewatch again and go, oh fuck, that was there in the background like the whole time. But they go to Nana's funeral. You know, they've kind of dealt with that, and they're heading home, and the family just, you know, they're just so distant from each other. You know, brother and sister don't feel that they love each other, but they don't feel like they're close. And it kind of played off like she's the weird little teenager and he's an awkward little boy, teenage boy, obviously interested in girls and stuff like that. Alex Wolff playing Peter Graham, I think, was the absolute standout role in the entire movie. Mainly because, like, Toni Collette is amazing. I can't take anything away from Toni Collette. Gabriel Byrne is absolutely amazing in this movie, and he doesn't do anything.
He is so subdued.
He is so subdued, and he quite possibly is the most weakest character I've ever seen.
Well, I put it down to the fact, like, the film's called Hereditary, and it's about the nan who's passed.
Yes.
Then it's about Annie by Toni Collette, and then it's also about Charlie and Peter by Millie Shapiro and Alex Wolff. He's the one who married into the family, so he is, I guess, outside of the hereditary kind of, like, disease, I suppose. So, yeah.
And so, in weird way, like, as the movie goes on, he is trying to protect his family, but at the same time, he's also trying to keep his wife at bay because she starts to make him go crazy.
But she's already lying to him as well, because she's like, I'm off to the movies.
Yeah.
But she's just going to sit in her car, or she's going to drive to a support group and may or may not go in there.
Yeah,
but it also then already shows that she's distancing herself from her husband. Right at the beginning of the first time we see her, she's just in the car. She doesn't care about getting the kids ready for the funeral. She doesn't care about what her husband's doing. She's just in the car ready to go. And that, for her, that is her isolation. That is her safe spot. And she retreats in there whenever she gets an opportunity to do so.
Which personally for me, I can fully accept for the writing of this character. But part of me as well also questions like how long has this stuff been going on for? With most movies, we're just seeing this tiny little window of the events going on, which is fine. It's a bookended from start to beginning. And I know I shouldn't think outside the box, but I do, because I start to think, like, how long has she been distanced? You know, how long has Nana been living at this house before she passed away? We start to get information later on from Annie when she's at the support group that she purposely kept her son Peter away from her mum when he was a baby, but she allowed mum into her life when she had her daughter Charlie, which mum also fed or breastfed, because we see the models, she's breastfeeding.
She wanted to, and we do see her later with the bottle feeding her.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't know if she was breastfeeding, but that was how she felt, and it may have happened, which is why it ended up becoming.
Yeah, mate, I've seen enough cult films and shit like that Nana was going in Charlie's room at night, probably feeding her, and then there was shit going on. But it's also the background of how Annie's dad killed himself, starved himself to death, and her older brother hung himself, proclaiming that mum was trying to put people inside his body.
Now, this all comes out in a speech that's about, again, the hereditary nature of a mental disease and how our entire family lineage has had these sort of psychotic or... is it DID, dissociative identity disorder,
something like that,
kind of stuff. And so she's explaining all of that, and she's also talking about blame as well, and it's a very powerful performance.
It's Toni Collette, mate.
Exactly,
Toni Collette.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, she even said like she didn't want to do any more dark or gritty dramas like this, but she read the script and she was like, "Whoa, here I go again."
I'd happily watch her in Muriel's Wedding too,
right?
If she brought it out, because I'm just like, it's Toni Collette.
Yeah.
Which is why I gave her my daughter, who she immediately stabbed her hooks into. And I felt guilty again.
But yeah, it is a great sequence that, and so for me, that's where I'm like, okay, like, of course the film is planting all of these other seeds, but I'm like, okay, this is a film about mental trauma and trying to understand it and heal from it, but yeah, there's definitely other stuff going on in the background.
Yeah,
and this sequence where she explains all the information is actually foreshadowing a bunch of stuff as well.
I suppose as well. I like I said, I know I shouldn't think outside the box. I know it's a problem, but I suppose in another movie, if it wasn't horror based, she would have been kind of punished, I suppose, for not dealing with her trauma earlier on in her life.
Yeah,
you know, she Annie, Toni Collette's character, is carrying so much baggage from her childhood as well, all the way through her adult life, with dealing with her own family as well, that while she sat in the support group, I suppose part of me is just like, I don't buy it, because you should have at least dealt with something instead of waiting for your mum to die to come to this support group of complete strangers to unload. And I know it happens, but at the same time, it's happening in this movie to get Annie to give the audience exactly all of the information they need to know that Annie is punishing herself, but at the same time wanting to punish everybody else for putting her in this situation. So like when she does go home, she is a bit cold to her son. You know, she does love her daughter, but there's a whole disassociation there, because we get to know that it was Grandma who was taking care of Charlie.
Yeah.
We'll find out later why, ladies and gentlemen. But I suppose let's get to one of the peak moments of the movie is where Peter wants to go to a party with his friends. And so he asks Mum if he can borrow the car. And she's like, "Are you going to be drinking?" And he's like, "No, of course not. I'm just going to be going." And she goes, "Well, you can take Charlie with you, I suppose." And you can tell he's a little bit, unhappy about that, which any teenage boy would be if he's got to take his 13-year-old daughter to a party with other friends. And Charlie is a little bit like, "Oh, I don't want to go," because obviously she's a bit of a social outcast and possibly two people at once. I don't know. But Mum's just like, "No, yeah, you can go. You go with her." And so they go. I love that little clicking noise that she makes.
It's more, well, I interpret it as a cluck noise.
Yeah.
And then when I saw her in the school, when the pigeon hits the wall or the window, she cuts the head off. I'm like, okay, it's more of a pigeon cluck noise than a click. But yeah, it's kind of like a nervous tick, isn't it? Yeah.
But it would pick it up.
The film.
Yeah. You pick that noise up. And when it happens, it kind of, after a while, you go, it just like,
it does make you uncomfortable. Yeah, right.
But Peter takes Charlie to the party, and they're walking around, and all the kids are there just having fun and drinking, I suppose, or drinking pop or whatever.
And he's infatuated with this girl, Bridget, who we had that wonderful butt shot where he's in the classroom.
Yeah.
And just to go back to that classroom sequence as well, because I think the lesson that's being taught in there is pretty much also foreshadowing the whole rest of the film. They're talking about Hercules and how whether the story is a tragedy because he has the choice and all of the clues are all around him, and he could see those and make the different choices, but he doesn't. And then we also discover that basically he's been forced to not be able to see those clues because of he has no control over it, and therefore it makes it a tragedy. And he's fated this way.
I think it's more tragic because if it's all just inevitable, then that means that the characters had no hope. They never had hope because they're all just like hopeless. They're all like pawns in this horrible, hopeless machine.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is so important for later.
Yeah.
But yeah, and of course this goes right over Peter's head because the teacher asked him a question. He's like, about what? What?
Yeah,
what? Well, I was looking at this girl in front of me, which I'm now going to go and try to smoke weed with at this party.
Yeah, he goes off, but Charlie wants to go with him, and he doesn't obviously want to take her with him. So he says to her, like, Payne, look, there's chocolate cake over there. Just go and help yourself. Now, as an experienced horror watcher, there are signs, as we said. There's multiple signs in behind scenes, red herrings, things going on. And with this movie, they'd made it obvious that Charlie suffers from a nut allergy. You know, that she needs an EpiPen. If she eats anything with peanuts in, her throat's going to swell up and she'll start to not be able to breathe, and you got to rush her. It can kill people, okay? I far more believe in this movie that the nuts are a lot more fucking punishable than some weird spiritual thing going on. The nuts are the real villains of this movie. But they just emphasize that obviously the family are neglectful and will just forget the medical EpiPen that their daughter might need just in case she has a fucking medical emergency.
Does that have nuts? Because we don't have the EpiPen.
And Gary and I discussed this. Obviously, from Gary's perspective, he sees it as the family being, massively neglectful. That obviously they're not even thinking about their daughter's safety in their situations. But for me, I also feel it's like a bit of a smoothed over plot hole. That they're just like, oh, the family are going to forget this really vital thing that is going to come up later on that's almost going to kill their daughter. And I'm like, but their daughter's like 13 years old. How long has she been suffering with nut allergy that this family should have at least had two? You have two on you at least. Did you remember the EpiPen? No. Luckily, I got the backup.
I imagine Grandma was always the one that carried it with her, and so the rest of the family were just like, nah.
Probably.
Grandma's got it.
That's it. It was like an asthma pump, isn't it? Whenever you see in a movie, people are like, oh, I've got an asthma pump. It just happens to be empty. But Charlie goes over and helps herself to some chocolate cake, and the movie just happily shows you that it's not good for her. She's having trouble breathing, and when she goes and finds her brother Peter, he picks her up, runs to the car, chucks her in there, and they start driving towards the hospital.
Just another little brief bit of foreshadowing here, is that when he goes into the bedroom where all the kids to smoke, they're on the laptop, they're watching a video of somebody under a guillotine being decapitated.
Oh, wow.
It's just like, oh no.
Wow.
It's just the foreshadowing is already there.
Yeah.
And there was also the moment where they were driving to the party, we saw this strange occult symbol on the telegraph pole.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no. And now they're driving back, and he's starting to speed up as Charlie's struggling to breathe. And she ends up winding the window down and sticking her head out. And then there's some roadkill in the road, and he swerves and the head comes off. And we sit there with Peter just staring at him as he is staring out into the dark, contemplating what has just happened, kind of trying to remove it from his mind, dealing with it, stuck in that moment. I don't know. But his performance, his eyes.
That's this sequence, this whole sequence where we just see Alex Wolff with the camera all the way home into his bed, leading up to Toni Collette's scream at the next morning. This whole sequence, it makes me feel like that sequence from Zombie Flesh Eaters, where we watch that woman get slowly pulled to that piece of wood.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's how it feels.
That's how it feels. And it's just what I also mean is that graphically we didn't need to see anything. Our imagination is doing everything we need it to do while we're looking at Peter's face. He sits there and he's just like, he wants to say, "Are you okay?" Or, you know, is he saying it to her? Is he saying it to himself? Does he already know what's happened? Did he hear the thunk? You know, there is no noise coming from the back of his car. When I was so shocked, because I'm just like, he can't just be going to bed. He can't just be going to bed, for fuck's sake. You haven't called your parents to tell them that you're leaving the party with their daughter who might be having a medical episode, and now you get home, you're not even going to fucking wake them up. What kind of universe are we? I know he's in shock.
I also just want to say, this actually happened in real life.
I'm
Where
sure
a guy was drinking, driving his friend, and his friend was struggling to breathe or to vomit out the window.
Yeah.
Got decapitated, and he drove all the way home, left the body in the back car, and he went to bed.
Yeah, because he's absolutely pissed out of his head and fucking going through shock. I get it, but at the same time, in movie terms as well, Peter's just absolute lying there, and I love it. I just love the audio. Toni Collette, oh my god, how much can I praise this woman? Just screaming her absolute head off, and your imagination is doing all the work of how she's gone to go get in her car, you know, and looked in the back and found the body there with no fucking head, and then you get the flash of the head in the road.
Yep, covered in ants.
Oh.
Yeah, it's... Honestly, Toni Collette's performance in this film is so good, I don't ever want to watch the film again. Because I can't take how it makes me feel.
Man, as a parent myself, if I felt that she's lying in that fetal position in her bedroom screaming about how she wants to die.
I also figured that position that she's in is foreshadowing the position she'll be in at the end of the film as well.
Oh, yeah. It's just, yeah. And that's what I mean as well with how this cult is kind of influencing this whole situation. But not only that, but you start to feel like how much they might influence the entire universe that these people inhabit, is because, you know, you've just had this massive traumatic event happen to you and your family, and nobody does anything to kind of help Peter. Like we will watch them become more and more estranged from each other, you know, up to that point.
That's because we do find out that deep down Annie blames Peter for killing Charlie.
Yeah.
And she can't bring herself to admit it because she still wants to try to keep the family together. And we just have those really uncomfortably quiet dinner table sequences.
But it's also like the reflective back to Peter, because like with Annie at the support group at the beginning, he blames himself for the death.
Yeah.
He technically takes on the blame and the fault of his sister's death.
Yeah.
And which in fairness is fine, because all of the things that led up were preventable. You just weren't seeing them.
Yeah.
You know, and that goes back to the story.
It goes back to the cult that wants to wear the family down so that they are at a point where they can be possessed.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. You just have to accept that, because, you know, no social workers are coming to check on the family. No police are really getting involved. No doctors are obviously. I mean, they get that phone call to say, "Oh, by the way, your grandmother's grave has been desecrated," and Gabriel Byrne's like, "What do you mean desecrated?" And then that's it. Nobody questions where the body's gone, or
well, that's because
it's just gone. And much like with Charlie's death, it's like it happens. Let's just move on. And I'm not saying it's an absolute bad thing. A lot of movies do it worse.
Well, I think it's because Steve is basically, he's the one who takes the phone call and he's like, well, I'm not going to tell my wife that her mum's just been dug up. He keeps it to himself. He's like, I don't want to add to any more trauma that they're going through. And so because he is the character that's least explored in the film, I imagine he was dealing with that outside of the family.
No,
but it never. But I
Yeah.
also know that Ari Aster's first cut of this film was over 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And over an hour of it was cut out. So there may have been more there.
Yeah,
but-
I like the idea that he might have been dealing with it in the background. But if he was, and it was just being kind of, taken care of while we weren't seeing, it is kind of empty scenes, unnecessary. Having the idea that the cult, as we said, because this is how it's kind of edited, the cult are, influencing all of things. They took the body. We know this.
They're in the house almost the entire time.
Yeah.
There's moments where you hear noises in the house that are not coming from family members, but because the way the film's set up, you hear those noises when there are family members in the house, and so you feel it becomes a natural sound, even though when you listen to it again, like when all the family coming into the house and you can hear noises in the house, you're like, the cult are in here.
Yeah.
And I also think because the fat dad keeps saying, everyone take your shoes off, and you see muddy footprints all over the floor, and I think it's the cult that are walking in all the mud, not the family members.
Hello, Maxie.
There's so many different things, and I love that dinner sequence with Toni Collette having her outburst and her letting this out, because the only other person she's been talking to as well is this woman called Joni. Now, Joni seems to be a really, really nice person.
She's great at first because you're just like, she is the character that is exuding this warmth and this passion, this.
Then that just shows how, mate. When you come to me and go, hey, Iain, I met this person, they're part of the cult, I'm just going to shoot you in the head, because these motherfuckers turn up in these movies just like Rosemary's Baby, just like The Omen. They turn up all motherfucking smiles.
Yeah.
All fucking
Wolf in
friendly
sheep's
and
clothing.
shit.
Absolutely.
Bullshit to that shit.
But I know, but if you're in a world and you don't believe in the cult, so you don't think a cult is surrounding you, she is the one woman who is caring and is listening to what Annie has to say, and so
she's a cult member.
And then again, when she sees Annie like almost driving away from the meeting, and she's like, "Whoa!" She hails her down like, "Hey, why are you driving away? Like, we need you to come in here because we need to grind you down some more." And she's like, oh, "I'm not going. I'm going home." And that's when she goes, "Oh, I lost my son," and that's when she goes, "Oh, that's my daughter was killed," and she's like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but here's my number. Call me. We both lost family members, so call me and we can talk about this."
See now, that's the thing as well. It's like, did she want to pull Annie away from the other support group members so that she could get her on her own? I don't believe that the other support group members are part of the secret cult.
Maybe one or two, but definitely
definitely Joni. Yeah. But I don't believe like the entirety of that support group are all
they're not
involved in that. But it's also like Joni talks about her son and her grandson, and then we have this situation where Joni and Annie meet up in this car park. They haven't seen each other for a little while, and Joni starts talking about how she had this medium come to her house, show her how to do this thing, and now she's been talking to her grandson, and so she immediately convinces Annie to come back to her apartment and to sit down, and they start to do this thing. Now, I'm not a complete skeptic. I do have some belief in some kind of other things happening in the other side of the veil. I'm open to, interpretations and imagery. I just have never seen any evidence, personally, okay? If I was sat in somebody's motherfucking kitchen and a glass started fucking moving on its own, pardon my French, and then they asked them to fucking write a message on a chalkboard and the chalk starts fucking floating and saying, "I love you, fucking grandma," burn that motherfucking house down. Because, mate, that's not normal.
I'm like, grab the camera. This is going on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
No one's going to believe us.
Exactly. Like, I'm fully in the mentality that I understand that the cult are influencing all this other stuff and taking. But in this world, in this universe that Annie is living in, there are situations, much like in a lot of horror movies, where you're not supposed to run up those stairs. You're supposed to run out the door. And so she sits there looking at all this stuff going on and goes, "Oh my God, I'm absolutely in complete shock." Instead of calling the police or getting news reporters round to make some money off this, I'm going to go home and I'm going to get my family involved and we're going to do the same thing.
Yeah. Here, just speak these strange Latin words.
I
It might be ancient Sumerian, I'm not sure, but just read it out loud. Make sure all your family's in the room or in
touching,
the house.
yeah.
And just raise hell.
I mean, fucking grandma's got that triangle symbol on her bedroom floor.
Oh, yeah.
Carpet that shit up.
Right. No, just burn that too, actually.
Burn that too. That's right.
Yeah, there's all kinds of triangle shapes in the film as well. That's all basically foreshadowing the evil.
Yeah.
But it also just goes to show as well, like, how much of a liar Joni is when she's like, oh, this chalkboard was my connection to my son and my grandson.
Oh, yeah.
But then if you look back in the car park scene when she's talking to Annie outside, if you look in the boot of her car, it's 2 chalkboards. She's literally just bought them.
She's just literally
She just brought them. The whole story about her child and grandchild is fabrication. You know, she just used that as bait to reel Annie in.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, you can tell how much control the cult had, because there was even a moment where a flyer for like a seance for skeptics comes through the letterbox.
Yeah.
On top of all the other mail.
On top of it,
So
yeah.
even though she didn't see that, she may have picked it up and been aware of it, discarded it, going, I'm not going to that. But then hearing the story from Joni, it just cements something that she's already seen.
Yeah.
And so it just goes to show the cult's influence. They thought of all of the permutations around manipulating Annie to get to where she is now, to where she's coming home and wanting to now perform a seance of her own.
Yeah.
Wow! Yes! Thank you, Charlie. That was so good.
Annie at this point has come across the books that her mother has about spiritualism, and a weird diary with like weird symbolic writing inside them. She starts to kind of get information about this King Powham or Payman, and she also starts to realize when she looks into the photo booklet that her mum has been friends with Joni for an incredibly long time. And from the looks of it, her mum has been hanging out with all of these strange people. And a lot of these strange people we've already seen in the movie. You just might not have been aware of them. On top of that, Peter's been going to school and he's been having some kind of moments. Like he goes to smoke weed at one point and his throat starts to close up, or he kind of has the same feeling and goes into a bit of shock with his friends.
I just want to bring up as well, like, it's strange, like, last time we spoke about Toni Collette was in Sixth Sense and how that was all color-coded as well, with, like, the color red. In this film, like, Payman, the demon, is kind of everything when he's involved in what's going on. There's blue in the frame, like, from the moment where she ends up knocking over the blue paint, but if you look at it, she didn't even touch the blue paint, it just fell over on its own, and it falls over on Joni's phone number, and so that's Payman's influence. When Peter's smoking like under the bleachers and starts coughing, there's this blue light that shines right down over him, and when he's walking through the school, we see this like blue lens light going down the corridors, this blue light behind Annie when she's working on the dollhouse.
Charlie had seen it as well.
That's right, and so that's like the demonic entity almost in manipulating things.
Yeah. I mean, it made me think of Donnie Darko. The Donnie Darko kind of thing flying around. I wasn't too sure if it was just him seeing it, or other people might be able to see it, or like was it even real at some point?
And there's the great sequence where he's in the classroom and he looks over and he sees his reflection.
And
it's just smiling. and then this takes me back to the fantastic argument at the dinner table between Annie and Peter. Where she's like, hey, that damn smirk on your face. And it's like, we don't see it, but we saw his reflection in the glass, and I think that's what Annie sees on Peter the whole time. Is him smirking at her like that, and that's what's driving her mad. She's like, how can you just sit there looking like that? And of course Dad can't see it. And Dad, well, I mean, he's just out of this argument at the dinner table. There's nothing he can do.
I felt so bad for Gabriel Byrne, but at the same time I thought it was just such an amazing performance from him that he doesn't. And Gabriel Byrne is so good, he doesn't need to be the pinnacle point of the movie. But I've already seen him in what Stigmata, where he was fighting the devil, and I saw him in End of Days where he got possessed by the devil. So actually give him the movie off in this one where he just doesn't have to do anything.
Right, well, he's going to be the victim this time.
Yeah, he's just going to be the victim. But yeah, Peter has another moment at school and smashes his own face off of the table, his school table, and so Dad has to go and pick him up. And I thought that was a brilliant performance from Gabriel Byrne, where he breaks down in the car.
Yeah, it was because he almost shoots through a red light, and it's also because he had alcohol and pills before going to pick up his son.
Yeah.
And he's driving back with his son in the back seat, and he almost killed them both.
Yeah.
And he is now completely empathizing with his son and what happened with his son and his sister.
Yeah.
And so he has that breakdown because he just was in the same position almost.
Yeah, it's just brilliantly done, because no words are spoken. It absolutely breaks down. But he gets Peter home, and we'd had that sequence where the school had phoned the house and there was no answer, and then they called Dad, and so Dad's going to go pick him up, and so Dad's a little bit annoyed when he gets back because Mum's there, but why wasn't Mum able to go pick up their son? And Mum is just she's happened to go up into the attic, and in the attic she's happened to find her mum's decapitated body, and it's starting to go black. So it's been there up there since obviously it was taken out from the grave. And once Dad goes up there, he comes back down. He's kind of in shock as well. He's trying to convince her that they need to call the police. But Annie's just like, look, the police can't help us. And it's kind of partly a little bit unbelievable for me that would happen. But at the same time, if you're involved into the story that the cult was involved in absolutely everything, which a lot of times with these movies they are, the police are involved. The police can't do anything. It's now just runway to fucking take off moment for the cult at this point. And Annie's there. She's like, I've got this book. I tried to set fire to the book, and the book set fire to me. And when I saw the sequence, I was like, is that still a dream? Is she in a dream at that point? Or is the book actually connected to her, that if she burns it, she burns herself? Is that the only way that they can stop Payman? I don't know. But she's convincing him to take the book and throw it in. And he takes the book and he goes to throw it in, and then he stops. So Annie takes the book from his hands and she throws it into the fire. And the moment she does, Dad bursts into flames.
Damn.
You're like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck did he do throughout the movie? Did he deserve that kind of death?
Well, I mean, he's not important in the cult's plans.
No,
so,
that's it, yeah.
Let's burn him up and get him out of here.
Burn him up. And Annie screams, but then at the same time, she just kind of stops. I wasn't too sure if she'd been possessed at this point.
Yeah, I think so, because we saw the blue light go past her, and that was it.
Yeah, and this is it.
Because we then catch up with Peter in his room, and you can just make out the shadow
that bit
of Annie up in the corner.
Fucking hell.
And then in the next shot, she goes crawling out of the room from freaking Exorcist.
I mean, we had that great bit earlier with Charlie in his room, anyway, and her head had come off and turned into a ball.
In a nightmare sequence, that was great. I mean, all of the nightmare sequences are great, like from Annie having that nightmare where she walks into Peter's room, and then she explains to him, like, I wish I never had you. I never wanted you. I tried to abort you.
Yeah.
And it's just like...
so many times you wouldn't die.
Right.
I'm like...
God damn. And you're like... And then as they end up, like, they both look like they're completely wet. And then we find out, because it's a dream, they're covered in paint thinner.
Yeah.
And the match gets lit, and it's like she's going like she was going to burn her kids, as we found out. And it is, the nightmare sequences are great. They really, really hit home, like, everything.
Yeah.
And I also have to say as well, this is also a horror movie without any jump scares. Like, it's so amazing.
I got jumpy a couple of times. I mean, like this bit where Peter decides to head downstairs. He's looking for Mum and Dad. I mean, we've just seen Mum scuttle out the room, so we know she's cuckoo. And Peter heads down into the front room, and he sees his dad's bird body. And I don't think it's got a head. Like, the camera doesn't pan all the way up to show us, but it pans up enough that I don't think you see anything past the shoulders. Now, I don't know why they're cutting off heads. In fact, I'm not entirely sure why the cult is doing a lot of the things other than just they want riches. Which I'm like... To be in the position that you are anyway, you must be super powerful anyway to control everything. So why, unless you want to bring this Payman into the real world? But it's revealed that actually Palman's been here the whole time. It's just been it was in Charlie.
It was in Charlie from birth.
It was in Charlie from birth.
Yeah, the original entity, the soul of Charlie, was displaced the moment she was born, and Payman basically possessed her.
Yeah.
But the reason why Payman is not like ruling the earth like as a demon monster is because it's in a girl's body and it needs to be in a male body.
He's allergic to nuts as well.
Allergic to nuts, and also is in a child's brain, and so it's not fully formed yet. So yeah, I mean that's the reasoning for it. But also, yeah, the cult and Payman know that it wants to get the Payman into Peter, but it needs Charlie to die first. It also needs the entire family to be worn down to the point where the possession can take place.
Yeah, I mean,
and also the 3 decapitations is part of the ritual.
Yeah, the revelation comes, like, obviously Annie's mum would have put Payman into her son,
or tried to,
but her son killed himself. Like, I wonder if Joni possibly might have tried to do it with her son and grandson, and that's why they drowned, because maybe they killed themselves. You know, there's the like they're wanting to put it into Peter, and I get that. Then this sequence where he comes downstairs and he's looking around and he sees that naked guy in the fucking doorway. I mean, we'd had that shot earlier on where Annie had seen the ghost of her mum. That freaked me the fuck out. So when I saw this naked dude in the door, why does cult worshippers always have to be nude at the end of it? It's kind of weird.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah, I'd rather just a cloak. Just put some cloaks on people. It's scarier to see those things dangling than it is a demon form. But he looks and he turns around and Annie chases him up the stairs, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She chases him up into the attic and he jumps up there, and then Annie's bashing her head off the fucking attic door underneath, and he's getting absolutely freaked out.
Mommy, please, I'm begging you to stop.
And then he realizes that he's actually made a mistake, like the cult was up there all the time anyway.
Right. So he jumps out the window.
So he jumps out the window. But that's not before he turns and he actually sees his mum, Annie, floating in midair, garroting her own head off.
The piano wire.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, God.
Like, that's a fucking image, people. Toni Collette staring at you while she just kind of...
Like half possessed,
saws
like
her head
still
off.
in there kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's the fact that she pauses and
That's
then
the-
carries on again.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? There's that look in her eye that she's really sad that she can't protect her son.
Yeah.
She's done what she can all this point, but there's just... And that's the main thing you have to remember with this movie, is that there was no escape, no control from the beginning. That's the rewatchability with this movie. But yeah, so Peter jumps out the window and gets up, and then he sees the decapitated bloody corpse float up into the treehouse. That treehouse had been fucked up since the beginning of the fucking movie. They should have just burnt that goddamn thing down. And he makes his way up there. And once he gets in there, he realizes that actually the cult were there waiting for him. You've got the decapitated body of his gran and his mum and his sister's decapitated head on this statue. And they crown him. And I assume he's become possessed by... He doesn't seem happy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think from the moment he jumped out the window and hits the dirt, I think he gets possessed then, and then Payman literally walks up into the treehouse to complete the ceremony and have the crown put on him. And
But he still doesn't look happy. I mean, Payman has got everything now, and it just... Not that I expected a celebration or anything, or like party poppers to go off. Like, the movie's been bleak as fuck, right? It just, the movie ends for me, and I don't know. Midsummer has the same type of ending.
does, yeah.
And I don't know how I feel about that. I enjoyed it more with Midsummer. You know, the ambiguous ending of how this goes. To do it again, I mean, maybe my fault. I should have watched Hereditary first, and then I would be saying about Midsummer. You've just replicated the end. I get it. Like, the cult's won. Evil takes over the world. Your whole family's dead. It's, yeah.
All this just so Grandma could have her wicked ways in hell.
Possibly.
The whole family needed to be sacrificed for her.
Possibly. Demons lie. They all lie. They have nothing. That's how they're That's why they're powerless. That's why they need mortals to do their bidding, because they actually have no power. They lie to you, and then you give them the power, and they go, ha ha ha. I mean, what's Payman going to do now?
Go to school.
Yeah, like, because I've been thinking
high.
that, right? So we don't know the name of the town.
No.
So I could assume that the entire town is a cult-based town based on the worship of Paimon.
If you want.
Okay, now Paimon has just been born out into this world, and so the entire town are going to be like, "Yay, Lord Paimon!" Okay, now what's he going to do? Become president?
He's going to go and play some Call of Duty and get high.
Yeah, like
get a job and, you know.
Byrne, like live in this giant house all on his own, or the cult member's going to move in with him? Was the girl involved in the cult? The one that he fancied?
Probably.
Probably. Probably's not a yes.
She's like
no
a
answer.
siren that kind of led him to want to go to the party. So
No, I can't-
like the cult. They had everything planned.
Now
So-
I kind of wish she'd been there at the end then. For me to go, oh yeah, she was involved, but because she's not, because they're all majorly older people, all of Grandma's friends.
Yeah, but like there was the guy that was smoking with him under the bleachers, like the guy with the man bun that's on the left there. He's also there, like one of the ones bowed down the front.
So I'd want the girl there.
Yeah.
I'd want the girl there if she's part of the cult to make me
Well,
go.
it's a
yeah,
small
there's
little
absolutely
treehouse. They can't all fit in there.
No, but like
The rest of them are in the woods. Maybe remember when it went from like the day to the night cut, and you saw all the cultists like in the field and around the house.
Yeah,
Like,
true.
Maybe they're just outside.
Maybe
You know.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
There's the film is so well layered.
Yeah.
There are so many things placed in there, like the similarities from the dollhouse to the real house.
Yeah.
And it does reward repeat viewings if you can stomach
Yeah.
the oppressive, evil nature and the distressing scenes in the film. It's deeply rewarding
Yeah.
for a film buff. But Ian, what were your favorite scenes?
Oh man, I mean, there are just so many great ones. I mean, most of the dream sequences, like even if they're not really dream sequences, they did happen, but the movie plays them off as dream sequences. They're all really well filmed. Like the entirety of the movie is just so well captured. And I'm gonna make it easy on myself. I'm gonna mix my recommendations in with my favorite scenes just to knock the motherfucker out. This movie is so good that when I compare it to other horror movies that are mainly more focused on the blood, guts, and the gore and the violent nature, that's why I do actually get upset. Because a movie like Hereditary can come along without the use of jump scares, without the use of musical sharp, forcing the audience to work out what's going on, with a story that is it's so natural for you just to follow the story, but then you just have extra questions going on. How long has this been going on? What are they going to do? This, that, and the next thing, and everything. The movie itself is so bookended. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. I can't think of any major one sequence I want to talk about because all of them are so brilliant. But the one image I do have in my fucking head is that smiling grandma when she turns off the light of her workshop. Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some very memorable moments in the film. The ones that stand out for me are mostly Toni Collette, especially at the support group when she's talking about her family lineage and the blame. That was great. The entire sequence from the party and the race to the hospital,
oh God, yeah.
The decapitation, the grief, the funeral, and then the dinner table kind of discussion afterwards, and the outbursts from Peter and Annie. It just rolls right into the next sequence, and it's really powerful stuff. And also the sleepwalking nightmare sequences again between Alex Wolff and Toni Collette. Their performance when she's in there screaming and also saying, "Yeah, I tried to abort you, you wouldn't die," and his reactions as well. Absolutely powerful stuff. Really great performances. And so yeah, it's all of those emotional sequences that really resonated with me the most. And it was very powerful stuff. It really was.
Why did you try to kill me?
I did! I was trying to save you!
Why did you try to kill me?
So Iain, do you recommend?
Totally. Like, why would you not watch this movie if you were a horror fan? There is everything you wanted in a horror movie, plus extra. Outstanding performances from Toni Collette and Gabriel Byrne. I mean, the actor playing Peter and the actress playing Charlie, they were outstanding as well. And to be able to hold their own against people like Toni Collette and Gabriel Byrne, I mean, just makes them look amazing, and then makes Toni Collette and Gabriel Byrne look even more amazing. It's just, as Gary said, it's so oppressive and so dark from the moment you hit play. You just, if you don't want to get involved with the cult, don't hit play. I did it for like 6 years. I was like, no, cult, I'm not. Then I watched it, and then now I'm like, no, cult, I'm not coming back. I don't want to look in the back of the screen, look for things. I know there's stuff there. It scares me. I don't want to go back. So then I watched Midsummer instead.
Yeah, I'm definitely recommending Hereditary. This is a great horror film that deserves to be seen. It's a masterclass in psychological horror with an unflinching exploration of grief and trauma. Toni Collette is utterly amazing in this, so believable, such a raw and visceral portrayal. You really feel everything. The sheer weight of her pain, it's what director Ari Aster was aiming for. You know, it's a roller coaster of emotions that's deeply unsettling, but nearly impossible to turn away from. I admit, the themes of family grief and loss and sadness and suffering and pain is at times so soul-crushing. You know, you feel it for its 2-hour runtime, with next to no relief or no comedic elements as it gets really oppressive fast, and it holds you there, along with its equally disquieting music score by Colin Stetson that perfectly heightens the tension and the evil. For Ari Aster, this being his first feature film, it's incredible. It's refreshing, and it's very well shot, with a great pace and a riveting story with well-written characters. It's haunting. It's a slow burn with some really shocking moments that makes this so memorable, and I really think this is a must-watch. It's that good. Every family hides a secret. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.